Elwood here from Wooden Spoon Data. I wanted to welcome Anthony on the channel from IJustLoveFooty. How you doing today, mate?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me on board. I'm keen to see what you've got planned ahead. So let's have a crack into it.
That's exactly it. Yeah, perfect, mate. So essentially, we're going to go over the basics of Collingwood's finals team last year, kind of where they're at this year, the changes to said team, a little bit of information over them, and just kind of get your thoughts on everything, because obviously data gives you multiple ways to look at things, and I think with somebody that's a bit more on top of Collingwood, it's good to get your thoughts on it. So yeah, it's lovely to have you here, and I'm keen to get your thoughts, mate. Look, we'll start into the basics here. Last season to this
Yep.
season, we've got a few major differences to the grand final team to last week. Obviously, we don't have Murph. That was a Frampton replacement a little bit beforehand, so we'll still compare those two. But
Yep.
um, yeah, then you've got Sidey. He's not in the side this last week. Ginnivan's obviously no longer in there. I guess just
Yep.
starting on your thoughts on those players. Guinea maybe not so much. You don't need to think about him too much, but yeah, side bottom and Olive Markov. What are your thoughts? Why are they out of the side?
Yeah. All good questions to pose. I guess, look, Guinea gave us lots to think about during the week and throughout that game for Hawthorn, but I'm glad that's beyond us now. But I think with the four players that we are seeing out of the side or in limbo, constantly finding themselves in and out of the side at the moment, and was a massive headline late last season was Johnny Noble.
Yep.
You know, he played pretty much every home and away game, and then found himself out of the side for the final series in favour of Oleg Markov,
Yep.
who himself had some ins and outs throughout the year, but yeah, managed to find himself as a mainstay for the season.
Yep.
Why did that transpire? I can only assume that Nobles is quite an undersized defender, more of a fits the realm of a small size defender, which leaves you very limited in matchups as a when it comes to looking at things from a defensive lineup. Whereas Leggy or Oleg Markov has that versatility, being 6'2". And I think if I had to guess off the top of my head from memory, I think Johnny Noble's around a 5'9", maybe 5'10" if he's lucky, which is significant when it comes to matchups. So I think that was the biggest thing. And Noble's one wood is his distribution and speed off the 50, which Markov has as well. Maybe not so much to do with his kicking efficiency relative to Noble, but I think if we look at Noble's last couple of seasons in the final series, he did seem to crack a bit under pressure. So
Yeah.
when we're asking for cleanliness and composure coming off the halfback flank from players like Noble, we didn't get that in his last couple of final series. I think McRae just made the educated decision to elect with Markov, who could do a defensive job and provide running dash if need be, and a lot of energy. He's a high energy type of person, and
Definitely.
it permeates through the team. So
It is
that's where I think we.
yeah.
You're good. Go on.
No, it is something I was going to say. Markov versus Noble is quite the question. Like I think you get a fair bit more out of sort of the attacking side of Noble. Just as a general, his score involvements and percentage of is higher than Markov. Though, if you do look to that sort of offensive side, it seems clear you kind of bang on. You get more spoils out of Markov. You're going to be taking a bit more possession in the back line. So, looking at your other kind of replacements, Schultz to Guinea. Now Schultz has definitely been a kind of amazing player over his years, and he started to find his legs this year too. I guess with Guinea kind of moving on, do you see an improvement in that position as so far for Collingwood?
Yeah, I would like to think, based off the general eye test, watching our games, I think our strongest department right now is our small to medium forwards, small to medium sized forwards. Right now, we got Bobby
Yep.
Hill, Lockie Schultz, Billy Elliott, and Bo McCreary.
Yep.
And I think they all sort of complement each other. We've got the high pressure players in Bobby, Billy, even Billy and Lockie as well. I think people would be surprised if you look at the stats and look at sort of the pressure acts and tackles that Elliott actually lays in those games. He's quite a high pressure player himself, but I think those three, Billy, Bo, and Lockie, a few B's there.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
they they do all the hard work. And then we got Bobby Hill, who has a bit of magic and a bit of dash to
Tons of
sort of
it.
add a little sprinkle to the top of that pressure. So
Definitely.
that's where I think we are seeing improvements. I think just adding more pressure and adding another high half forward flanker in Lockie to firstly defend as a forward and then punish teams going fast the other way, which is sort of a true Collingwood style. And that talks to maybe Fly McRae's early investment in Noble this year, because we've realised we're probably not transitioning the ball as well as we have in the past. So Noble has come into the side to specifically find ourselves moving the ball better from defensive half.
Yeah,
Again, similar to last season.
it definitely seems like he's helping get that going, and which I guess is where we come to the next sort of player that's out of the side in side bottom. Look, we as a general, I'll quickly touch on him first. In terms of general player rating, side bottom's the biggest drop in your form from 2023 to 2024, 10.12% to 5.2. So really severe drops. What do you think that's attuned to? Like, what's brought this on?
Man, it's a tough question to answer, but if I can try to rationalize it from my perspective, I would say when you start your season making basic errors that you're probably not accustomed to a player seeing in side bottom,
Yep.
it tends to fester on your mind and on your confidence, and you start questioning, is this really me? And then every mistake you make in any sport, any game, or anything, if in work, if you make a mistake, it usually it
Compounds.
multiplies
Yeah.
and the anxiety, it compounds, exactly. It compounds and the anxiety grows, and that's sort of what happened for a lot of players, including side bottom,
Yep.
where we've known him to be so trustful on his left foot, right foot. His work up and down the wing was so reliable. Defensive, his defensive acts, spoils. I'm not sure what his spoils say across the year, but he'd have to be one of the highest rated players when it comes to spoils as a defensive winger.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess it's obviously form, confidence, and hopefully he can overcome that. And I think that just comes with getting the ball back in his hands and just getting a couple clean disposals and just going from there, just baby steps, incremental gains from there.
DeGoey is one that I find interesting. If you look at his pressure acts compared to last season, they're through the roof. He's doing some really good stuff in some regards, but it doesn't seem to be translating everywhere across the field. And I think as a general, we're finding a few things just not working in the Collingwood midfield. I guess if you were to maybe not singling in on De Goey or even Sidebottom, but if you were to kind of give a general issue that you'd want to see solved, what do you think you'd want to address first?
I think if we want to get like really narrow it down, I think after the first three games where we're losing in the fashion that we are, we're allowing teams to move the ball pretty well against us, and then obviously some of that comes from just self-imposed mistakes or clangers, if you will,
Yep.
and that is always tough to defend once you turn over in your defensive half. It's really hard to sort of withstand that, and good teams like GWS, good teams like St Kilda, Sydney, Brisbane, they'll punish you.
Yep.
I just think it's just a matter of showing some of the clips where either the boys are switching off in transition defensively and not finding their next position in the next play to impact the next play. It's really specific, but if you see some of these clips, they're quite daunting.
Yep.
You see players like DeGoey and Jack Crisp who are just ball watching when they should be worrying about where they can position themselves in the next play.
Mm.
And then tie that in with just being able to stick our tackles, which we are definitely seeing a lot more in the last two
Yep.
games, being Brisbane and
Yeah.
Hawthorn. I think if you could talk to it a little bit more, maybe, but I think we had 80 tackles
Yeah.
both times in the last two games, which is massive. Is that right?
I'd have to double check your game stats, but I believe it was both over 80. If yeah, I'm
Yeah,
99% sure.
close to, if
Yeah,
not.
it was very close, if not. And and it's kind of getting
Yeah.
straight back to where you were in the premiership era. Looking at your just overalls in terms of defensive tackles, they seem to be relatively similar. Pressure acts across the board are up a little bit. Defensive 1v1s are there's fairly similar. So for me, it kind of comes down to there's got to be an issue potentially more in your midfield transition. I do notice that you're sorry, my dog's getting up here. I do notice that
You're good. You're good.
yeah, your disposal to turnover rate and your disposal to clanger rate is up, and I wonder if it's potentially methodology, as you say. We've got a bit of a reduction in meters gained, not much. Disposal efficiency seems to be down a little bit across the board too. So I'm wondering
Yeah.
if it is a chill out, Toby. I'm wondering if it is a sort of situation of methodology being changed because um,
Yeah.
the players' general statistics don't seem to be massively different week to week. Toby, out of here, buddy. um, but yeah, it's essentially it seems like there's something that's quite dramatic that's changed, and I think it's hard to quantify with just stats, which is why we love having you on here. It's why I love your content as well of really nailing down specific plays and what that means for the game. So it's just something
Yeah.
that data can't really show you unless you get some sort of level that I don't have. But yeah, it's what we love. It's why we love watching you, mate. And wanted to chat to you here. Looking on to the kind of next sort of side of things, right? You've got a few injuries at the moment. Dan McStay to
Yeah.
come back in, potentially Pendlebury with some rib problems. Um, I guess the
Yeah.
ones that really those two are probably the major ones to come in soon. Other than that, there's one player I did want to mention. My editor James wanted me to ask you about it. Your thoughts on Nathan Kruger and Dan McStay? Both were brought in to play that sort of tall forward role, and Dan McStay's done it well, but he hasn't stayed on the park, and Kruger's fairly similar. Is it a
Yeah.
situation of you have somebody ready to go there, or is it kind of time to hit the drafts, the free agencies, that sort of thing?
Yeah, great question, and it's a great issue that plagues Collingwood almost perpetually, as since as long as Travis Cloak hasn't been at the club
Bang.
from recent memories, as far as having a locked in key forward who we can go long down the line to, and we lack that. And you know what, Woody, if we didn't have McStay in that prelim final, we don't beat
Mm,
GWS. There are some key plays where he just takes some big marks and kicks big goals and big moments that gets us to the grand final in the end. So it speaks to the importance of having a key forward in the final series in particular.
yep.
Now, as far as I mean, if we're considering that McStay maybe doesn't make it back onto the field this season, which I would suspect would be the case
Yep.
to be safe on the safer side,
Potentially, yeah.
all pre-season we looked at Ash Johnson, we looked at Reef McInnes, we looked at Nathan Kruger. And with all respect to Ash Johnson and Reef McInnes, they're never going to be a Daniel McStay replacement. They are, at very best, a third tall,
Maya check
and they will
style,
play a
yeah.
different. Yeah, yeah, exactly. They'll play a different role relative to what a traditional key tall forward can
Yep.
offer. Kruger, he's a giant. He's big bodied. He's young, relatively young. He's only 24, I think. So I thought he was a bit older than that. So he's still got age on his side. He's quite erratic and he's just a real crash and bash type of forward. But because of his height, he can have these moments where he's able to clunk those balls aerially and have an impact and hit the scoreboard. So unfortunately, he did do his hammy in the first VFL game or one of the, I think it was the first VFL practice match. I could be wrong, but it was one or the other.
Yep.
So he's the player that I'm really looking to solidify his position in the Collingwood forward line and really serve as that key forward, and then we can sort of let loose on players like Brody Myercheck and Reef McInnes, and they can get the lesser matchups in there and match up with the second
Second to
key
thirds.
defender and a third key defender and so on and so forth.
Yeah, bang on, bang on. So look, I suppose if that's the case, right, and we're likely to see Kruger coming back before McStay. I mean, either one, right? In the forward line at the moment,
Yeah.
who do you think makes room for them?
Okay, so if we're looking at the way our team is structured right now, you're obviously looking at Bobby Hill, Lockie Schultz, Bo McCreary, Jamie Elliott as your four small to medium-sized
Yep.
forwards that will always fill those positions when the ball is bounced in the first quarter. And then at the moment, we've got Reef McInnes and Brody Myercheck
Yep.
as the two taller serving forwards for Collingwood. So really, if we're talking about starting six, it's probably Reef McInnes who falls off and maybe goes onto the bench. And then we see someone like Hoskin Elliott, who maybe is the unfortunate one to be culled from the team at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're looking at the fringe players. You got Hoskin Elliott. I would still suggest Noble is a somewhat sort of fringe player. Side bottom can be in that conversation now. I thought Tom Mitchell was done, but he's completely proven me wrong the last two games. So
He's
what
done
do
well.
I know?
No, I was in a very similar boat. That first sort of bit under a month, I was really questioning whether he had the legs in him anymore. But no, he's
Yep.
pulled it out. He's done well. I guess yeah. No, okay. So we're likely to see McInnes potentially move away, or even Hoskin Elliott. If that is the case, I guess leaning on those two, it kind of goes to another one of my questions that I was maybe going to attach later, but we'll go over it now. Just the future for Collingwood. You do have a fair few over 30. Pendlebury, Sidebottom, Howe, Cox, Elliott, Mitchell, Myercheck, Hoskin Elliott, and Crisp. Um,
It's a lot.
it's a big group, and they're all pretty much your starters, right? I mean, maybe you're saying
Yep.
Sidebottom's not going to be there much longer. Maybe you've got a bit of plans in place to deal with some of those players, but I mean, who do you think is going to be the hardest to replace out of that group?
I'm mostly concerned for Pendlebury. I know people have their qualms with him as of late, but I think we saw it in the second half against Hawthorn. When he's not off the field, we lose that intangible being that leadership trait,
Yeah,
along with his ability to have impacts in big moments and to not be frightened in the contest and be able to compose himself, lower the eyes, and find a pass that nobody else does. So I think that is going to be something. It's just going to be a big loss. Like it's a big loss for the culture. It's a big loss for what you get leadership on the field. It's a big loss for the assets he has on the field. So I think out of all those players, it would be Pendles. And then if you want to add one more player, just who sort of serves a significant role for Collingwood right now in another section, that would probably be Jeremy Howe. I think Jeremy Howe's going to be hard to replace because he does really well to unleash Darcy Moore and allow him to do what he does as an interceptor as well.
definitely. I think those two bouncing off each other for the long balls has kind of served Collingwood really well this last couple of years, and
Yeah.
yeah, he'll be sorely missed once he decides to hang it up. But yeah, okay. Well, with that, mate, it's kind of getting to majority of the kind of questions I had for Collingwood. We do have a little bit to maybe touch on in terms of stats for certain players. Um, First,
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go over was quickly in defense, right? I don't know what I mean, to keep things simple, right? I find the easiest way to quickly assess a player's impact tends to be player ratings by the AFL. It's quick and
Yeah.
easy, and Darcy Moore's down. He's down 4.08 points, down to 8.7. Um, Looking across his stats, he doesn't seem to have too many major issues. Meters gains are down a bit. Contested possession down a little bit. Like everything's down a tiny bit. Doesn't it wouldn't really worry me majorly, but considering the results to the start of the year, it maybe is something to think about more. What do you think's causing this situation?
Yeah, I guess from a statistics standpoint, off the top of my head, a few things which maybe you can talk to a little bit more in a moment. But I think he is slightly down on his intercept marks. I think that's something that, even though it might be slight, it does add the reason why the player rating may be down. And I think his maybe disposal to clangers could be slightly down. I could be wrong, but I just from what I've seen, he's made some absolute blunders early in the season. He's slowly getting better, but I think overall that's probably from a statistics standpoint where it would be affecting his ratings the most. And then for the general fan who's just sort of watching the game and asking, well, what's wrong with Darcy? I think the biggest thing at the moment is his judgment is off as an interceptor. And for those who may not be completely familiar with what the interceptor's role is in the realm of AFL footy is players like Darcy Moore will make decisions frequently to come off their direct player and try and impact where that ball is falling aerially. And if it's slightly off, that ball will likely go at the back, and then Collingwood are chasing tails, running back towards their goal with players goal side of them from the opposition and finding easy marks inside 50. So and that's been off for Darcy Moore for most of the games we've seen. And most recently, I remember late in the fourth quarter against Hawthorn, and we gave them more of a sniff because Darcy Moore came off his player and was well short of where the ball ended and didn't have an impact on the play. And I think it ended up being Dylan Moore, who just had an easy Joe the Goose finish out the back because he wasn't able to impact the play. So that's probably what I point to at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, kind of somewhat quickly, his spoils surprisingly are up, 2.3 a game.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that would say maybe he's positionally being asked to kind of cover things he can't, or he wouldn't normally be asked to do, right? So say if Murphy was there, it would be a different story on whether maybe he takes the intercept mark instead of going for a spoil, or maybe because he does have more faith in his fellow tall defenders. He feels the ability to kind of stay looser on his man and get both hands up. So I think for me, intercept marks are down, spoils are up. It suggests that maybe he's either a step off the pace or being asked to kind of do a little bit too much, maybe. I'm not sure. That's kind of where, at this point, there's a little bit down in some statistics, but it seems like it's not a lack of effort. It seems like it's more of a
Never.
situational thing. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, never a lack of effort.
No, well, not with Darcy Moore. He's a footballer. Looking over that, we've kind of gone over most of the defenders. I wanted to quickly mention Murphy versus Frampton. Looking over it, Frampton's done pretty well to replicate Murphy's output. Obviously looking at tons and tons of different stats points. So I guess from your eye, is there anything that you've seen him maybe do not quite as well or even better than Murph would?
Let's start with the negatives. So I think Billy Frampton can be a bit clumsy sometimes, and that's probably what keeps him out of the side is his clumsiness and I guess brain fades sometimes. He's a little bit slow off the mark. I think he's like 6'5" or 6'6". So although he's a similar size to Darcy, they have different athletic builds, which makes a difference obviously in a game of footy. So Billy struggles off the mark, but. And then the Murphy's, he's 6'3" odd. He's pretty mobile. He can play tall, short, medium. It doesn't really matter. And he always puts his body in positions that not many people are willing to do in the modern era. For many reasons, people don't want to, put their head on the line and don't think it's worth it. But Nathan forgoes that sort of thought process and will do anything for the team to his own demise. Obviously, recently, given ongoing concussions issues he's had. So that's one thing. As far as good things for Frampton relative to Murphy is his height advantage and his the extra weight he's got on his body. And I think I could assume that Frampton's intercept work has been almost elite for his start to the season for Collingwood, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think we get that with Murphy. And I know it's a small sample size, but I think Murphy's intercept possessions, intercept marks have been really good to start the year.
I mean, look, to be honest with you, Frampton is out. performing Murph in some of those regards. Now, contested possessions, he's down. He doesn't seem to get his head over the ball like Murph does, as you said. But in terms of his
No.
advantage to size, it does seem to stand out. Contested possessions, he's averaging 9. It's a small sample size, as you said, but that's a huge jump from
Yeah,
Murph at 6.2.
that's massive.
If you look at spoils again, you actually got a 3 spoils per match improvement from Frampton over Murphy, and I think that mostly will come down to their size. The one thing I'm
Yeah,
really impressed of from Murph, from Frampton to Murph, is he's actually really competitive on the one percenters. So they're both kind of
yeah,
definitely getting their hands in it and trying to get things done. I think yeah, it's a different style of play though, and a bit more I guess you'd say fluid from Murphy in getting the ball to the people that can then move it forward. And I think that's
yeah,
one of the potentially one of the little reasons you've got a little bit less score coming from your defence. But yeah, otherwise defence, looking fairly solid. In fact, I'd say Braden Maynard's actually having quite the season. He seems to have improved in
yeah.
quite some statistics. So yeah, quite impressed with him, mate. Um, Look, that's where I think majority of your defence is at the moment. There is a lack of scoring being made. Essentially, scoring involvement percentage is down 16.3% across your defenders,
Yeah,
and that would suggest that essentially there's a lack of movement, which has been said, publicly. I think you've already said you've got Noble in there to address it. I guess the question I'd have is do you look at moving Dacos back? Is it something to start considering more seriously?
yep. It's another question that is a difficult answer for the Collingwood army at the moment, and I think obviously we saw Nick Dacos feature quite prominently on across the halfback against Brisbane with in tandem with Johnny Noble, and that worked really well.
Yep.
Um, Whereas against Hawthorn, I would like to think that Nick Dacos started more in the midfield relative to the halfback flank for some reason, given how well it worked out for um, Collingwood last week against a team like Brisbane, who were just grand finalists, obviously, last season. So, do I think we keep him there? Or should he go there? I think yes, and then maybe we give opportunities to players like Finn McRae, Lockie Sullivan to have more of a crack inside the midfield, because I think these days in the AFL you want your best ball users and generally speaking the best players in your team are usually featuring across the halfback flank now. Like Woody,
Yeah.
if you look at St Kilda, you got Wanganang Malira, you got Jack Sinclair.
Yep.
These are the guys you want the ball in their hands, and if they have a good game, then you'd like to think that St Kilda are in with a crack in every game that they play if they play well.
Bang on, and I think we're seeing it in a lot of the league. It's one of the positions where you really get license to attack the football. You're not going to get much freedom from the midfield to do that. You don't get much space in the forward line to move the ball. So really, the only option is a halfback, and the league tend to found well half forwards don't put the kind of pressure on that you need when you want to stop ball movement. So it is one of the easiest places to attack from. And I think if you're not getting the results there, um, these next few years, while this is the type of football movement, we're going to see
Yep.
some struggles. Look, moving to your midfield quickly, we've touched on side bottom. He's down a little bit, um, fairly significantly, to be fair. Pendlebury is down a little bit, but not enough to really worry about. He is just classy through and through. Mitchell's found some form. We've discussed Nick Dacos. What do you think about Josh Dacos? Now, I'm a bit of a Saints man. I was at the Collingwood Saints match, and I remember thinking quite clearly that he was the best midfielder for the game. Do you see him kind of needing to step up another level with the potential losses going forward, or do you think it's surround him with people that can assist?
It's tough because you're sometimes robbing Peter to pay Paul when it comes to Josh Dacos. So you have him. If you have him at the centre bounce, then you're probably losing a bit of class and kicking going inside 50 off the wing, because you want your clean players on the outside being able to receive the ball and rely on your tough contest players in the middle to feed that out to players like Josh
Yeah.
Dacos. If I remember correctly, I was looking at some stats at the end of last season. I think Josh Dacos, while he didn't feature heavily in the centre bounces, when he did, he had quite a good conversion rate of being able to earn his centre clearances relative to how many times he featured in those centre bounces. So that was interesting to note. Is it something we're seeing more? I think Josh Dacos has featured in the middle more so, or had opportunities this season. So where that ends up, I'm not too sure, but I guess it's just having a balance and at the moment just having him in the rotation at the very least and going from there. We'll figure it out as the season transpires, I guess.
Yeah, fair call.
Sorry for the roundabout
No,
answer
no,
there.
no, fair call. It's actually something I started looking into when you mentioned it in centre clearances to CBA attendance. You bang on. In Josh Dacos is by far your best centre ball winner, winning the contest at 2.3%. So he gets a clearance every 5 times you put it in there, which is very high. The next best on your team
Yeah,
is at 15.6%, and that's Jack Crisp. So yeah, it's one of those ones where it's interesting. You've clearly got some people there that are developing, but just with the age profile of some of the players, it does make me wonder. Two or so years down the track, you've already mentioned some players there with McRae, and a couple others. Um, I suppose with the changes coming to your lineup, is it going to be McRae? Is it going to be those younger players, or do you think it maybe one or two free agency sort of type signings as well?
yeah. I think if we look internally first, we've got Finn McRae. If he doesn't find himself in the team consistently this year, definitely next year. Lockie Sullivan is more like that I guess middle aged type of player that you can bring in, who's ready made and proven at VFL level. Being I think he's been the VFL League and Best of Errors twice now. I could be wrong, but from the top of my head, that's what I recall. He was an emergency just quietly for Brisbane, so it does suggest that he's closer than what people might have first thought as far as finding a look into the team. So we've got two players there who can impact the team immediately, and then we've got Ed Allen who's still a little bit away, but is that big body midfielder who will hopefully fulfill or fill the gap that's left behind by players like Pendles and Tom Mitchell.
Yeah.
Um,
So I
so that's the mid.
I get
Sorry, you
no,
go
that's
on.
all right. I was going to say. So I'm guessing you're not seeing Jack Bytel in the midfield too much going forward.
Um, kind respectfully, I don't have him at the front of mind just yet. I know he's a old St Kilda boy of
Yep.
yours, and I love his story. With his ongoing back issues. But
Yep.
who knows if he has a couple seasons to really find some rhythm and find some continuity in the AFL/VFL.
Yep.
Maybe he does feature. I mean, Collingwood clearly saw something in him, so uh,
Who
let's see
knows?
what
That's
happens.
it. That's it. No, definitely. Think there's a little bit to work on for the long term, but clearly a lot of class in. Look, I think Collingwood's well positioned to get back into the finals long term. Moving on to the kind of your thoughts of this year. I see it kind of slowly working back together. There, as you said, little bits and pieces to improve upon. But where do you see Collingwood kind of finishing at the end of it all? Do you see it being back to
Yeah.
back still, or is it a little step outside of the possibilities these days?
It's hard to look at it like that in this current situation, I would say. And my mantra all year long has been just it's cliche, but it really is taking it game by game and just building on the little wins within the little battles of that you're dealing with in the team. Get the ticks from players like Billy Frampton, who comes in and does a job.
Does it well?
Finland McRae's been a small tick. Lockie Schultz has been good. just getting these little things. Johnny Noble coming back in. If that doesn't work, then where else do we look? But fortunately, it's worked out in the short term. So those are the things I'm focused on at the moment. But we also need to consider that Collingwood had a quite arduous or treacherous fixture to start the season. I
Yeah.
think it was 3 games in 12 days against teams like GWS, Sydney, St Kilda, who are all top 6 sides in the league, and then you got Brisbane, and then you come back to Hawthorn and Adelaide. So I think, given the circumstances, I think Collingwood are still have done okay, and I hope and would like to think that it will just begin to improve from here. As a biased Collingwood fan, of
Look, as
course.
somebody that tries not to be biased and definitely isn't biased towards Collingwood, I think you guys have a good shot at it. And I think we're starting to see the right things from you. We know that there's the skill level there to get it done. So for me, it's we've gone over the little changes to the side. There's 4 people from last year's grand final side to this last week. It can happen. They can get back to it. For my thoughts, it's just a matter of keep chipping away at it. Don't let those little head things cloud your overall goals, and kind of get back to the major goal here. So, look, I mean, I personally, and this was going to be the final question for me. I personally think Collingwood is definitely able to get back to back. I don't know if it's as simple as I thought at the start of the year, but I definitely think it's possible. And I think if not this year, there is the possibility of doing it the year after, or potentially years after that. Um, Realistically, do you think this, with the older players on the list, is kind of one of the last major hurrahs, or do you think the doors ajar for a little while?
I think our window is slowly closing. If I'm being transparent, but who knows? Who knows what can happen? You see Geelong. We say they're done every second year, then they find a way to recruit and
Yeah.
change and adapt to the game styles that are taking the forefront in the AFL. So who knows from that point of view. I think with Collingwood this year more specifically, I think we just need to add more strings to our bow. Our defensive half work last season was unbelievable. We're starting to build on a more of a forward half pressure game as well this year,
Yep.
which is going to be important. And centre bounce dominance in the sense of scoring from centre bounces, which I think is a champion data stat. Unfortunately, that would have been nice to be able to reference, but that is something that all the good teams are doing really well at the moment. Geelong, GWS, Port, I think they've won 2 and 3, and in final series, it's quite an important stat. I mean, I think Melbourne scored 50 points against the Bulldogs in their grand final
Yep.
when it came to scores from centre bounces, and similar to Collingwood against Brisbane last year, we had some sort of dominance from there as well. So while centre clearances are important, it's also important what you do with those centre clearances and how you scoring from them
Bang on.
in the games that matter the most. So those are the things I'd like to see us work on.
Definitely agree. Yeah, I think statistics can lead you to certain answers where that might not be the case. For a little example, St Kilda styled, Bonner got 1,000 meters gained the other week, but 17 turnovers. So I mean, really, how helpful is it at the end of the day, right? So yeah, I,
Yeah,
I think, yeah, clearances are important, but provided you guys keep kicking goals, it's not the end of the world. So
yeah,
yeah, look, I'm keen to see what Collingwood does for the rest of the season. I think we'll see them back in the top 4 soon. Whether they end the season at number 1, debatable. I think that'll be the challenge,
yeah.
but I can see them climbing pretty quickly in not long. Um, Look, Anthony, that's pretty much it for me today, mate. It's been lovely chatting with you. I've gotten to ask you a million and one Collingwood questions, which has been great because, look, as a St Kilda fan, we want to dissect the best and then replicate and beat them. So, that's where we're at. Yeah, lovely to chat, mate. Anything you want to say? Any thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, well, I just want to obviously thank you. I think the flow in the conversation was great, which is always handy to provide some dialogue to the people who are watching, and I'm sure myself, similar to other people who are following you early in your journey, we're keen to see the next video when it comes to all the data and
Yep.
whatnot. So footy heads like myself, we're holding our breath and waiting for it, mate.
Cheers.
So keen to see
We're
it.
we're working on it. It's there's a lot of little data things going on in the background. I think the next one is actually going to be an all Australian prediction style
Love
thing.
that.
But yeah, it's all coming along. My projects tend to take a lot longer than I think initially. So it tends to be word of mouth gets out too quickly. But look, thank you so much for everything here, Anthony. Yeah, we'll end it here, and I've got to start thinking about, I believe, Sydney as well now. So yeah, thank you for your time, and
Fun
I got
times.
to get cracking on that. Have a good evening, mate, and yeah, we'll talk soon. Cheers.